Okay, if you've been following these videos, this is pretty much the end of the 1995 season. Our last contest is over with. Dan Banjock broke our streak of wins, so we congratulate him again. Before I start a new building project, and actually today or tomorrow, Joe Adamusco is going to be here with the wings and tails for the Spitfire project. One of the things I like to do is go over this plane with a fine-tooth comb and make a little note of anything that looks worn out or look that it needs to be upgraded. Now, anybody that's followed, I guess we've been doing this since '87. Anybody that's followed my technology knows that I like things to evolve. Each year I take the plane, I look at it, and I say, well, this could be better, this could be stronger, this could be lighter, and try to make each one an evolution of the plane before it. And of course, with the Spitfire, this is going to be a joint project with Joe Adamusco. One of the things we're going to try to do is combine the best of all worlds. We want to have some of the best craftsmanship that Joe can put into this project and engineering, some of the best that I can put into it, and obviously the best of Jim Greenaway's, the technology for the nose construction, the technology for the wing airfoil and the flaps and the controls. So, what I would normally do at this point in time, I'm going to put this plane on the rack, and we may get to fly it. It looks like the flying season is pretty well and gone though. What I like to do, and I'll do some of this just to give you a rough idea on camera. One of the things that I didn't like to have to do was cut that hatch in the side of the body. I think next year I'm going to engineer a hatch in that comes off with screws. This plane has an exceptionally high amount of flights for a one-season plane. It wound up where we have a half a gallon left from 52 gallons of fuel. That's kind of a lot. Most people don't fly that, and maybe in a lot of years. Anyway, but the whole evolutionary idea, if you build plane after plane after plane, and each one is totally different, if you go from a Roughie to a Nobler to a Flight Streak to a... you never really evolve. Evolution never takes place. You never really get the full impact of upgrading things each year. What we've tried to do every year is take the plane at the end of the season, look at, and just as an example, did the hinges wear out? Yes, no. Did the Ray rudder linkage wear out? You know, we changed the way we do the Ray rudder, and by the way, this one is perfect. Some of the other things, the hatch, so that we can adjust the controls. I want to be able to do that next year. A careful look at this plane showed me something that I think is significant. There is not one stress crack anywhere on the plane. The landing gear legs didn't get loose or break, even though almost the whole life of the plane was on the grass field at the circle burners, where it's really rough. Taking all that into account, the dope finish held up extremely well. Extremely well. I don't see any reason we should change much on the finishing, and it was very light. The gold leaf lettering withstood the test of time. The canopy, none of the things in the canopy got loose or broke out. All in all, the motor runs were very satisfactory. The weight of the plane was even under what I originally projected. So, I know that the really, really top-level competitors usually don't build a new plane every year because it takes 2 or 3 years for an individual plane to evolve. But what we will be doing is, when the flying season begins in the spring, we'll be flying this and the Spitfire back-to-back, and obviously pick at that point in time which plane we will fly at the Nationals. But it would be real nice, since Joe and I have been planning this project for so long, to be able to fly both of them and have them both on the same circle at the same time and whatever. And it may be that one of the things you'll want to do or consider doing, and not out of the question, is if you have somebody near you that likes to build, is build 2 dual identical planes, and you can copy all the ideas off that Joe and I are going to try. Some of the things we want to try on this project: Joe's molded up the leading edge sheeting. Dave Midgley is going to try to mold top blocks, and we're going to make some effort at trying to do that. Don't know how far that's going to go. We also will either try to come up with some very, very elaborate fancy paint job. Camouflage, candy apple camouflage has come up in the discussion. Or copy some of the Spitfire pictures, and many of them have come in already from other people in Tampa that have loaned me or sent me pictures. So we'll be putting them in the video at choice locations, just so you can see how my mind has been being warped by this for almost a year now. Anyway, We're going to begin the project tomorrow. I'm going to clean this plane up and put it away. Percy Atfield is here. We're going to have to take him to JFK and try to get a visit over at Big Jim's, who lives right by JFK. But starting tomorrow when Joe is here, we really want to go into Spitfire mode. I really am looking forward to it. Actually, I don't even know if Jimmy's going to come over tonight to repair his old-time stunt plane. If he does or doesn't, we'll try to, get a couple minutes of that. That's another thing too I want to include in on these videos. Since this is the beginning of a new cycle of videos, a new series, all of the projects that we're going to be working on, we still have to make the wing for Big Tsunami. George has finished his lawn project, his backyard project. The Spitfire project obviously will be the dominant theory, but we'll try to get all of the projects, the repair projects and things squeezed into this set of videos, just as if, the idea being just as if you either lived in the upstairs apartment at this house or if you live next door. And I really hope you enjoy sharing this. Most of all, I hope you enjoy passing it on to other people, so that all in all, we'll all have Spitfires, Stragers, whatever. I count the '95 season as probably one of the most fun seasons I've ever had, even though I lost that last contest to that mean band jock. I really had one of the best times of my whole life in 1995, and I'm totally committed to the idea of having fun in '96, getting with Joe and the Spitfires, doing our Monday night classes, and passing on everything we learn or find out to you. So, yes, I love it. Oh God! All right, Joe Adamusco's here. Tuesday morning, ta-da! And we're ready to go into Spitfire mode here for these are the mock-ups of the tails so far. We're going to try to make up some horn parts, some push rod parts, and he's got some wingtip pieces. We'll do a little show and tell here to see how far he's gotten on this already. Tip weight box. Let's take a little look at this. Looks like standard PM type, and keep in mind what we're trying to do is use all standard things that we know work. No reinventing the wheel here, but of course turning it into a Spitfire.
632 weight naked pulleys.
Obviously you don't need to make a lightweight tip weight box. Just do a little show and tell on this. Bob Martens is already doing the rough sketch on the plans, so...
And Bob has sketches of these tips.
He's going to be working with us on trying to get the best set of plans possible for anticipating somebody in the world. The RAF may need to make Spitfires or something. Okay, that's pretty much standard Cardinal Pattern Master, whatever you want to call it, Midgleyized parts. And he's got two of them, of course. This is going to be a new thing. He's going to have a tip weight box on the inside wing and the outside wing. Just kidding. The reason there's two tip weight boxes is, there's two wings. So anyway, we're going to spend this day. We want to try to get, number one, you want to put the gear blocks in first, right?
Well, yeah, we could
okay.
Do that. Or do nothing. Just talk about Spitfire. That's okay, too.
Yeah. No, we'll make up the gear blocks the first step. So let's take a look at the wings. Joe, you want to do a little show and tell what we got done? Last time we were at Joe's shop, I think if you remember, if you go back, we were working on my birthday. Well, actually, it was my birthday. They screwed me on my birthday real good. Had the surprise party for me. Now, Joe's got a lot of little things on here that are worth mentioning again. Obviously, this is all, it hasn't been sanded yet or anything. He weighed each one. This one is 8, one is 7.5. He can have the light one, it won't matter. These are plenty light. These are made on the rod method. If anybody hasn't seen tapes on the rod method, we have plenty of tape on the rod. We have 3 or 4 planes built on the rod, and these are no different. It would help if you haven't seen the tape of the visit to Joe's house. That had some nice little tips on it. Some, it has my birthday party on it, in fact. So let's take a look at what you got done on these two. And then we're going to, number one job I think today is we're going to get the gear block. Do you want to do this where we get the gear blocks in both wings? Because I'll make all the parts up symmetric, identically, and we can just go right through it.
Sounds good to me, man.
Okay, and then we got tails. I got to make some horns up, some special stuff for horns. But again, the idea being, Jim has pretty much worked with us on this to keep this a pattern master, so that this is not some new animal. We're trying to make it as much like a pattern master and use as many of the proven dimensions that have worked plane after plane after plane after. Every one of these planes has made it into the top 5. In fact, that one's been in second. All proven stuff. All the planes fly pretty much the same. They all fly well. They even fly well if they're a little bit heavy.
That's how the guide will.
Okay, this is Joe's custom guide that fits right into that last rib. He put a little carbon mat on one side. Did you bring any of that carbon mat with you, Joe?
No, I didn't, Wendy.
All right. If you can, mail me some, okay? I'd like to put that on some of the fuse formers when we make them.
Tip, I don't know, is that hollowed to your specs?
Yeah, that's plenty close. Plenty close.
This weighs a ½ ounce.
Okay, you got the slot.
And then it'll fit over that. So.
And you can get the lead outs as far back as 6.5 from the hinge line.
That's the way it measures out.
As long as we can get them back to 6.5, I think we're in Fat City. You also have these a little different that that only one screw moves both lead outs, but I don't think that's some kind of critical thing you can't live with or without.
Well, it's not too late to change any of that. That's why I brought everything, you know, loose pieces. Nothing's permanent. The only thing that's permanent is the sheeting, except for the
only thought I have is, and I think Jim would concur with it, that should be able to adjust the lead outs individually, and they should always be. These are too far apart. I would like to see the screws on the outside, so you could get the lead outs really close together. Again, that's something we could work on later. It's not something that's the end of the world here. The tips aren't glued on yet, so.
Well, see, my plan is that. You know, we'll try to get as much as we can here today, but you know, when I leave, I'm leaving all this stuff here.
Okay.
Because I got, you know, my commitment things I'm going to have to be taken care of, so.
Yeah, well, Joe, anybody doesn't know, Joe's going for a foot operation?
Yeah, I'm going to have my foot cut off.
Oh, well, when he comes back, I'll have both of these planes done. He doesn't know it yet. But anyway, doing this as a joint project, one of the things Joe and I have talked about 100 times already is it should be a lot of fun working on this together, he's doing some work, I'm doing some work, and obviously we'll even sucker other people into making parts for it or whatever. Making a joint project out of a plane is kind of a neat thing. We'd like to wind up when you can see there's Spitfires everywhere in the shop. Spitfires and naked women are two favorite, and maybe we could lose the Spitfires. Anyway, keep sending those Spitfire pictures in.
You can break them right off. I thought maybe you might want to do that until you know, for lining your flaps up or something on center.
No, that's.
But then that just would have to be CA'd in. But
yeah, just run some.
There's enough material here to get that down a lot thinner if you'd want. I don't know. But you have to see once you get the flaps on and these. You
took plenty of still photos of this, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, the construction and stuff. Maybe we could go run through those again at some point.
Let me show you what the shape of this looks like with a flap.
Okay. Yeah, that's what. We'll take one and put one on the brown table over there, and then we'll, actually we're going to start on one first, but I'll make up the blocks two at a time as if we're going to do two wings at once here. It definitely looks like a Spitfire, I'll tell you. Anybody doesn't recognize that shape as a Spitfire, forget it. And you got the 1/4-inch cap strips, C-grain cap strips. I don't know if you can see this on the video, but believe me, in real life, this is really a work of art here. You know what I'll do? In fact, take this wing off the table, Joe, and I'll put the blanket on so we don't ding it all up while we're working on it. Let's put the blanket, get in blanket mode here.
So Martins has detailed sketches I see.
Yeah, I sent him some of all. He's going to start working on our plans already.
On these both tips. And if the lead-out guide, if you're going to change that, that'll have to be a revision for him to...
Yeah, that's a little Mickey Mouse part done. By the way, this is a good tip for anybody that doesn't know or never done this. When you're working on you get to the point at least where these wings are now, get some kind of, in fact, this is the softer of the two blankets. I would have this one. We have one sanding blanket that's kind of full of M600 and all kinds of junk, and one nice soft one. Now that makes a nice cushion for working on. Another thing's good if you have carpet foam, or that egg stuff. You know that stuff they use for a mattress mat? That worked real good last year. See, I got a bad... Now here's the good tip. There's a bad spot on this blanket. Somebody dropped CA. Just cut it right out. The hell with it. I don't want to have any dings in it. Check that you don't have any dings. Anything's going to put a ding. Here's another hole. All right, put one of those wings up here, Joe. There's another piece. You always have these little things that CA or epoxy or whatever they are from working on this. We've been repairing and working on this for so long. You see, now there's less chance What I like about, especially when you're doing the gear blocks, you got to force things in and
Yeah,
do a lot of cutting.
The cap strips are off.
Exactly. Okay.
Oh, and by the way, these get radius down here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look at some of the construction techniques Joe's used on this. It's really nice. All right, so I'm going to lay out some of the material. I'll go get it out of the drawer. Some of them sure we'll need to make the gear blocks up, and we'll assume we're going to make both of them up at once.
Hey, you want to see this bell crank, Wendy?
Oh yeah. Okay. Now the bell crank's in there permanently?
No.
Oh, okay. Take it apart. You like this construction, huh? Where you can just take everything apart?
Now the bottom
Love
is
it.
epoxy there. So
Okay.
and this is the green way.
Okay,
Green.
let's see. You got each one marked.
Green, and I've got the green letters on the R1, R2.
Okay.
So that's how you can. That's
All right, so
that's how the parts will match.
it'll be easy now when we want to put the lead out assemblies on the bell crank. That'll be a piece of cake.
But just so we don't ding up this doing the gear block, this bottom sheet comes out. It's the way I like to fit, so you know.
Everything a press fit, yeah. Well, we make the gear blocks up. I want to be a press fit too. By the way, those ones we did on all the planes this year, the system that we use for putting gear in has worked. There are no planes with loose gear here. Every one of them, the gear is in like a rock. I feel real confident recommending that to people. That's one of the things that I think we've got under control is that gear block engineering stuff. That's worked out real well. All right, the first step is this is light ply, and I measured out the rib spacing. Where the ribs are going to be is 3 1/8.
Okay.
So we're going to make it 3 1/4 oversized, and then we'll zona saw off all the extra. So I know I need 3 1/8 for each block, and I'll try to make all 4 in one shot over at the saw. Just make sure they're all the same. In fact, we'll make them a little oversized. I'd feel better if they were oversized. 3 1/4. 3 1/4. And if you can follow through with this, this is the best, most reliable way I've ever found to put gear in a wing. All of the ones that we've put in using this method, we have yet to have one break come out. And we're flying on grass almost all year long. Even at Middlesex, there's no bargain up at that, when you land up at the north end of the field. So all I'm doing, I'm making, and I'll tell you what the dimension is in case, these are 3/4 inch. The width is 3/4. In fact, you know what we could do? We'll send Bob Martens Joe can replicate each piece on paper so that the plans will have accurate pieces. Now that'll be the four base pieces that we need. Notice that the grain is going front to back, because what this block is going to want to try to do is spread. There's no strength going this way. It's going to be sitting in ribs. It's going to be double plywood. It needs all its strength so it doesn't split. So you do not want the grain this way. You want the grain going front to back. Now one of the things we have 4 new people that are subscribing to Spitfire videos. They don't know that this is a sanding table, and I will send them all a copy of the video on how to build this. We turn this on, sucks all the dust in. Packs with the blind nuts and everything. We're going to need them. All the dust goes down in there. You don't have to breathe all this garbage in. Real nice setup.
And let's see, you'll need.
So obviously step one is I want to line them all up together. See that I have 4 symmetrical pieces. They're all close enough. Get me a little sanding block. By the way, Bob Martens was the one that sent me some of these little sanding blocks. I don't know which ones, and these are handy. I like to start by getting everything clean and radius. I don't want to be gluing hairs and wheat strokes and everything. Then I'm actually going to take a piece of the 1/8" wire to lay out the gear slots. If you use the piece of wire, you'd like to have it confined nice and tight. That would be choice one. Again, this is one of the areas of building a plane where you really don't want to make the world's lightest set of gear blocks. You don't want the lightest nose construction. And you sure don't want, for sure, you don't want other things that could ruin your whole day. The world's lightest push rod or something like that, that in the middle of a flying season, self-destruct, ruin your whole day. We're building a plane, we want the plane hopefully to last forever. All right, so I start off with the 4 blocks. Now when I'm doing things like this, sometimes what's nice to do is make yourself a little pad instead of working off the soft stuff. Okay, now what I have one of the blocks, I have the wire. This is just a scrap piece of wire. I try to get the wire centered, and now I'm going to get 2 more pieces of light ply cut with the grain acting end grain. If you were to put this in this way, the grain doesn't add a whole lot to the strength. You'd like to get it so most of the grain is rubbing up on the wire. And we're going to make a little trough so that these actually are just 2 little blocks. Now, this is one of those areas where it's nice to have 2 people. Joe's holding a wire right in the middle. If we didn't have Joe, you could put a weight on each end. And we'll just, again, the grain is going side to side. I want as much end grain here as I can get. You can make these pieces. They don't have to be exact. They snap right off. I've even made this piece out of rock hard balsa. I feel not a whole lot to gain by making balsa instead of light ply. Get some CA on here. Now the part can hang over, because when we're all done you can take it over the Dremel saw, turn it upside down, and use the bottom as a template and just cut it out. You actually, if you didn't want to be so fancy, you could just take an oversized piece, glue it on. It's going to leave the little trough. It'll be exactly 1/8 of an inch, and then we'll make the door out of hard plywood so that it'll confine it in, and we'll only need 2 screws. We're going to use 256 screws. So actually using that piece, now I just made up some extra. Let me just break it off. It can stay out on each side. It can be oversized. Again, because we're doing 2 in a row, we'll make up the little scrap pieces, and Joe can trace them out, send them to Bob Martens, so that the plans will have all these little pieces shown in full size. Okay, once it dries, of course, sometime you get some glue on the wire. You might want to wax the wire, so just in case. Now, because it's oversized, this is my first block, the first, whatever you want to call it, rough block. I'm going to go to the saw, using it this way, and just trim this off so it's a perfect block. By the way, these weigh about 1/3 of what the old-fashioned solid wood blocks used to weigh. I've weighed these out. Because they're light ply, the reason you're gaining is because the grain is going in the proper direction. When you make the block with the grain this way, it always wears out and the gear legs always get sloppy halfway through the season. This is really a nice bulletproof way to do it. What I did, I ran that over on a belt sander, dressed all the edges off. Now what I want to do is with thin CA, This really firms up the joint, keeps the edges nice while we're working on it, and because it's end grain, it'll just soak right in. You won't even have to use kicker. Again, the whole idea here is every time you can save a little weight somewhere and still make the part just as strong as a unidirectional part, you're ahead, and it means more of the airplane can be things that you really want it to be instead of stuff you're not going to see. Then of course the last part here you want to get, because this is the end grain that's going to actually rub on a wire as the wire torsions. Now if you were to make this block out of a solid piece of wood, you'd have about a third the strength because the wire would start to work its way loose, and it would be heavier. Light ply is lighter than the lightest of the other woods that I've used. And just dress that off. Once that CA kicks by itself, okay, there's our base block now. So what I'm going to do now is I'll do it off camera. I'll replicate this 3 times, so I'll wind up with 4 blocks. Now while I'm replicating up the blocks, Joe is going to cut the holes in the wing. Just using a block and make a cutout right in front of the spar. We want to use the spar as part of this strengthening member. So you cut a little hole here with a brand new number 11 blade. Get the hole all laid out. Now you can take a little piece of undersized plywood, wrap some sandpaper around just to clean the grooves out, because the CA will leave a little roughness in the groove. And you want to make sure you have a nice tight fit, that it's level and it's tight in all dimensions. Alright, Joe's working on just dropping the holes for the blocks. We want to be able to put an 1/8 inch cover and just have a piece of balsa, a little cap. We don't want to sand plywood to balsa. We want to be able to sand balsa to balsa. Now I want to take the blocks themselves. I got 1/8 inch plywood and I want to make the doors, what will amount to be the little covers. I'll leave them just a little bit oversized until we're all finished, and then we'll block sand the whole thing in down to final shape. So I'll leave the incline on when I cut these out. It's always good to leave everything just a little bit oversized. In this case I want the grain going in the direction, the length of the block. Grain going in the long direction. You cut that first block down a little bit, Joe? Well, you can just trim these off. That's not a factor. Okay, these will be the 4 pieces. I'll go over to the saw and just whack these off. Alright, step 1 is I want to find roughly the center. We like to get the screws somewhat centered. It's a little over 1.5 inches. Draw a very light line. The reason for not putting the 2 screws side by side is you tend to make a stress crack in time. So we're going to spread 1 screw on each side. 1 screw to this side a little bit, 1 screw to this side a little bit. Now one nice trick you can use is use the first door for a template so that all the screw holes are the same. Key it in with 1 bolt just to hold it in place, and then drill the second hole, and this way all of them will be symmetrical. What I always do is take a micrometer. These are 256 nuts, mic it, and get a drill that's of real accurate size. You don't want to have the doors where they're a sloppy fit, of course. Try to get the hole within a couple of thousandths, so it's kind of neat and workmanlike anyway. And the other trick is not to over tighten these screws. You don't want to have the blind nuts come all squeezing everything out of shape. This is not holding a motor in or anything. It's just holding in a little cosmetic block. I put the little washers on. And we want to leave these sticking up out of the wing just enough so we can cover these with balsa and get a nice contour. That's what Joe's working on now. Of course, once you make the first one and you have the template, then you can go fit them into the wing. Joe's almost ready to do the final fit in here anyway. Now what I like to do, once I get everything centered and even up, a little bit of thin CA, I'll hold the blind nut in. While that's kicking off, a little bit of thick to build up a little fillet around it. Obviously we don't want these to fall down into the wing. And you can just take the old Q-tip out. That'll make a nice bead without kicking it off so fast that you get popcorn or anything. You get one little drop of CA on here to hold the washers in place. Again, the Q-tip is a good thing. It kicks it off nice and slow. Now I set up the old belt sander so I can true these up. Try not to get too much material off. And Joe's going to trim this undersize after we sink these into the wing. If you don't have a belt sander, obviously you can do this by hand. Glue a belt to the glass table and just do it by hand. Gets that all nice and true, even. And what I did, I put the notch in for the wire because of course the wire is going to drop down into the wing and we're going to confine it with another block here. And I want to sand, just cut this out with the Dremel tool, and then I want to sand a little radius in here so that it'll be a nice tight fit on the wire. Again, the whole idea is to get a nice tight fit on the wire so you don't get any vibration or almost like having retracts. Cool.
What?
This is Joe's little idea. He took the aluminum pad. This is, by the way, an aluminum motor mount pad. Glued a nail file to one side with CA. Show him how you get in the 90-degree cuts on there. Bob Martens will be impressed with this. Nice little thing. Of course, you could make sanding blocks out of hardwood, but the aluminum pad is exactly the right size. You can get all the little edges 90 degrees. Of course, what we're striving for here.
Okay.
Okay, then get a dry fit on everything. Everything should be a nice press fit. It should fit in place without glue, and then we'll just tack it in when we're ready. Remember, we want to have that pad far enough down that we can skin this with balsa and the heads of the bolts won't stick up. Make it nice and aerodynamic.
Tight fit.
Now, because we made up 4 gear blocks, you got your 2, right? We coated Joe's 2 with red stripes, 1 stripe and 2 stripe. These with yellow stripes, 1 and 2. So now, when we take all the doors off, we'll be able to line which door goes with which set of blocks. That's the whole idea, just to coat them in. And eventually we'll trim off all the screws to the right length. That we can do a little bit later. But right now we want to try to final set the blocks into the height of the wing that we want before we put the covers on permanently. You know, Joe's got the red set of blocks. We're going to get ready to just sink these in. He's rough cut and dry fit the notches. So the next step here we want to get is a nice tight fit. We just have enough clearance on top of that, and then we'll make up the block that's going to go on the other side of the rib to hold the wire. Now what Joe is doing is taking each piece that we make roughly and making up a little template for Bob Martens, so when he does the plans, We should have most or all of the key parts that we really need on here. It'll just make building a plane a lot easier. Whoever's gonna, assuming somebody wants to trace out all the parts, you could use these same parts on a PM, a Sidewinder, anything, wouldn't matter. Okay, we want to get the blocks pressed in. Joe's getting a final dry fit on this now. You could use that little nail file. By the way, we got a neat little tool from Uwe Degner. I'll show it on a video later. It's a little Dremel drum that has a rounded tip, and you drop these little caps on for dremeling. Looks like it's going to work great. We need to find a job that we could use it on, but I will show it. And thanks to Uwe, really appreciate it. Anybody sends in good ideas, we'll put them on a video, share them. George is back there. He's working on the glass work for the tail. That's the part of the big tsunami that's been sitting here all summer while he worked on his yard. We'll be getting into that later today. More people will be coming down the shop, and of course the mandatory lunch. Okay, good tip is this tubing that I bought at Radio Shack. It's Teflon tubing, and this stuff makes a grate. I just cleaned off the old CA jar. We're going to have to get into some pretty tight areas. It makes it that you can get one drop of CA just where you want it. It doesn't seem to clog up anywhere near as bad as the SIG stuff or the other brands. So Joe's pretty much ready, and I want to just mention a couple of things. You'd like this to be parallel to the sheeting, not 90 degrees, because otherwise this side of the block gets to be paper thin, and then everything kind of gets to where everything's just not workmanlike. And of course, Joe being the fanatic that he is, and me being a butcher that I am, I had the final say in this. So we'll tack those in place. You could just put a couple, in fact you could do it, Joe, use the tube here, put a couple of tacks on it. If you can, squeeze the block against the spar at the time you're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So you get a tight, let me get on the other side here. I can get a tight fit on that. The tighter of a fit you can get, of course, the better it is. Just get a few, just enough that it'll stay in position while we're working on making the bottom blocks up. All right, now before we actually tack this in, I'm going to take some of this wax, a little bit on my hand. Any kind of Simonizer or anything is good. Wax the wire, because we're going to have the wire is going to drop down into the wing and hold. Joe's making up the confinement block, not the block where this mounts, the block at the other end of the rib that holds it from shifting. All of the stress is going front and back. There's no stress side to side. So we're going to put 64th plywood on each side. This will drop down into a slot. Oh, you got it made. Well, I got wax on my hand. Oh. It won't matter. I'll hold it by the end. And this will drop down. The spar will hold it. This will drop into the confinement block. And the wax that's on there will keep this from getting stuck into the wing while we're tack gluing it in place. Okay, let's show this on the close-up lens. Get that. You got to put a little airfoil on the front of that so it just drops in and it holds onto the sheeting that way. Now, it may seem like this is an awful lot of extra work, but when you think of what it takes to repair a wing when you use the old-fashioned gear blocks, it could make you crazy. These don't break, and they're about a third lighter than the old traditional, all glued together, and let's hope you don't ever have to land on a bump blocks. Okay, let me look in there before you actually glue it, because we're going to tack glue this. As that wire drops down, it's going to be confined in a little block down there. Notice that the ribs are tripled and the grain is going straight up and down and sideways, so in effect the front part of that rib is balsa plywood, balsa plywood. And the whole trick of this is that that wire that goes from here to here has to be long. If you leave it short and it only goes in this much, it has so much leverage it'll break out almost every time eventually. The whole thing that makes this work is the length of that piece of the wire. And you want to get a nice tight fit up against. Just lay that in place, Joe, and I can show what that looks like even without the wire in there. Super good piece of information. Now let's see that. And that wire will drop right in there, a nice tight fit along the edge and along the airflow. And then we'll saturate, we'll soak this whole area with thin CA so that wood is good and hard. Okay, there's the wire, and that wire will hold it in place while we tack it. That's why we put the wax on. Now that with the wire you can actually press that in place. Once you're happy, well, first bake Bob Martens up a little template. Make him a little template. In fact, you make the template, I'll go make us some coffee. I'm getting tired. We've only been working here for 15 hours. Okay, Joe's making up the other set of confinement blocks once he has the pattern. You got the patterns all made up for Bob?
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's funny, I got to tell you this little story while George is here. We heard noise all morning while we were working down here. We heard thump, thump, bang, bang, boom. I kept running up and down the house. I thought maybe the roof was falling off because it's kind of a breezy day. The guy next door is putting a driveway in. They got trucks and jackhammers and stuff. Giving me a little cause for concern here. Now, you know when your fellow modelers respect you when they tell you, "Hey, Wendy, hey, listen, you low man on the totem pole, go up and make us coffee." Oh man. What's the story with that glasswork on the tail? Because we use that resin, don't forget. That isn't real epoxy. Looks okay?
My problem is we run over here a little bit. I'm going to have to...
Oh, sand it off. Block sand it off.
Down. They got a little run here. So
Yeah, block sand it off, otherwise the cloth will be going up over the hill.
Oh, it's pretty good.
Okay. And that was with the can of resin?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's been drying outside since before the team trials.
It's almost dry.
Okay, so then you wind up with what amounts to be a little pattern. The finished piece here. Joe's got one made. All we have to do is, we're going to have some coffee first, is replicate this up 3 more times. And we'll have enough to do 2 wings.
You got to make sure you do it inside and outside, though.
Right, right. Well, it's a lot easier if you make pairs.
Yeah.
Just like we did
2
the gear
outsides,
blocks.
2 ins. Make one identical to this.
Right.
and
Notice what we
2
did over here. We put the other set of gear blocks over here, so we're
100%.
not tempted to crisscross and have two of yellows and 2 reds. Actually, that's one of the things you have to constantly remember when you're doing 2 wings at once. You got to be working on individual pairs.
Landing gear on the top of the wing on one.
Yeah, tip weight boxes on the top of the... Now, this is a good little trick, is just hold it to confine it in place. Like a little chopstick, just stick the end of a number 11 blade. That holds it down in position there.
Wait a minute, something ain't right here.
Okay, it takes a little dry fit. And you got to put that little curvature so it gets a nice fit onto the airfoil. Now this one we've already done. Let's get right in here. You can see what we've done. It's got a complete curve in it. Glued in. I let thin CA sit in here, and then I painted on some thin CA on the inside of the sheeting like a nice big footprint. Because this is the piece that's going to take all the abuse. That wire is going to want to kick back or forward depending on what you hit. To make it rigid, that piece is now the critical thing. The spar is holding it. The triple grain rib is holding it. This one has triple grain wood, and the block is here, and the whole thing weighs less than 7 grams, so I don't think you're going to beat that. And this whole thing inside is soaked with thin CA and then wiped with a Q-tip. Now it just takes a little dry fitting here. Okay, let's see what that looks
I'm
like.
missing something here.
Okay, now the inside edge, you can see what Joe did when he built these wings. Get this on a macron. The inside edge has a radius of ambroid. It's all double ambroided. So you have to take the piece that's going in there and put a radius on the inside to get a real nice tight fit. Is that what you're having trouble with, running into that double ambroid fit?
No, the angle seems to be different.
Okay. Well, if it is, we'll just recut it. I made them plenty big that you can change that cut. Just change that cut, run it up on a sander, and it's all set. But you want it to touch the sheeting and the rib and the spar all at the same time. All right, we'll just do a little fitting here. It needs a little hand fitting. Okay, now with everything in alignment, everything is lined up pretty well. We're going to make a brace here, so a doubler for the spar, a triangulation. I took the thin CA, and I guess you can see this even. If I hold it up, you'll see the light shining on it. All the sheeting between these two ribs, both sides, in a complete U fashion. We've soaked it in there real well. Joe's going to cut those pieces up right now. We'll use that as bracing. Okay, there's the other side. That's all set to go. We did a nice dry fit on the wires. The wires slide in and out. You could use the stripper if you, well, doesn't matter. You only need, this is just a scrap brace, really. We get those tacked in there, and pretty well done with one wing, and we'll do the other one off camera just to get things moving here. And we have to make up our, well, we're going to make up the door hatches first, then we can put one wing away, get it out of harm's way here. Okay, we made up the triangle piece that's going to double the spar here and go up against there. Let's just see what this... Joe's making up the final cut on a piece here. Get the cut in between the ribs. It'll triangulate the whole thing. I don't think that block will ever go anywhere after that. Do a little... Let me get around you, baby. A little dry fit here. Get the spread right. Okay, you can see you can hold it with the point of a 26 blade. He's marking it with a nice fine line pen, or pencil. He likes pencils, I like pens. Pull it out. Make a nice even cut with the Zona. Where the hell's the Zona? We just had it out here.
You should see these Spitfires these guys are building. They're unbelievable. They made elliptical wings. They're just unbelievable.
This unpaid commentary by Mike Costello, president of the Circle Burners here.
Compound curves going
Comes
all
to
the
take us
directions.
to lunch. Drinks all our coffee. We don't have any coffee
If I
left.
show up, I'm taking you
It'll work all day for nothing here. Alright, he's going to dry fit that in there.
That's why I was invited here.
I don't remember inviting you. In fact, I remember telling you, stay home. Okay.
Always laugh.
Mike's still working on his ballerina.
Well, he's goofing off big time. He's goofing off long.
What you want to do is the corner of that triangle, because you have a glue radius in there, you want to take the corner of that and just break it so that you're getting a nice tight fit.
Yeah, you can. You heard already?
You just break down that corner. Because if you try to push it in the corner where the glue joint is, there's glue in that radius and you don't get a nice tight fit. And of course what we're trying to do is get nice tight fits. It'll be pretty good. You go for your operation, you come home, and there'll be two wings here in silver, huh, Joe?
Oh, that'd be nice.
He likes that idea.
No, that'd be nice just to get them so I could tissue them and...
Yeah. Oh, they'll be done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
No, you didn't carve them?
Depending on how much we're going to be working on George's dirt system here. You can glue it first and then carve it. You can glue it and press it in with your thumb so it forms that contour. And then just shave it in both dimensions with a sanding block.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was only a second off. I mean, the fastest guy after me was like, I was 30 seconds. The next guy was 29. I think Jimmy was...
Now you can press it in with the handle of a razor, or
You only get credit for 75.
just press it in with the radius.
So,
Press that right into position, and it'll make a perfect form, just like you have a mold. Now you can trim both edges. As soon as it kicks a little bit, trim it right down to shape. Even sand it in case we get somebody criticizing that we don't sand the inside of these planes nice enough.
To beat Stagger Line. And only beat Jimmy by a point. And Jimmy had a bad landing or something or other. He nosed over in his landing or something, or he might probably. He's very annoyed with the...
Do you have any measuring cups?
I don't think I have any measuring cups. We can use a jar top. Let's see if I got a jar top. We're going to mix up some fiberglass here while Joe's doing the bracing.
Want me to open it for you?
You know, you can see how nice that triangulation. Soak it with thin CA. soak all inside here again and soak the edges of the ribs.
Too bad now.
I think these are great. Okay, the next thing is making up the caps. We have the plywood pieces already made up. What we want to do is cover this with a piece of balsa wood that's thicker than the wing so it sticks out. Reverse it, drill the holes through for the bolts. Joe's got to do a final fit on that, and because he's the fussiest of all of us, we're going to let him do all the little woodwork on that end of it. Just trim it right out nice and square. Okay, the whole deal here is, like Joe is doing, is just open up the hole so that the gear blocks will drop right in. You'd like to have a 64th clearance all around if possible, and the bolt holes line up. So obviously this is a little bit of a labor intensive thing. That's why we take the master craftsman Joe Adamusko here rather than Wendy, who's the butcher of Poland or whatever they call me. So while he's doing this, and this is kind of labor intensive, there's no point putting hours of this on video. We're going to go over here, Giorgio Venturini, the king of epoxy. We found a great way to open an epoxy can. The can was nailed shut. You just shove a screwdriver in the can. Alright, he's mixing it up. 15 drops an ounce. This is that SIG finishing resin. We're going to do a real quick and dirty. This is the tail that belongs on big tsunami. 6-foot span tsunami. This is the stab, and we'll just do a real quick job getting this all glassed up. Just spread it on. Let's get this out of the way. Okay. Leave plenty on there. Don't try to get it that the last little drop is off. But just don't miss any spots if you can. No matter what, you're going to have to putter around with this. Okay. Now you got one big glob here. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, okay. Now, pick this up. Let's put one more sheet of newspaper down. Mike, can I borrow that paper right where you are? So that we're working. Oh, take one sheet off. Look. We don't have to read about the Jets losing again. Lose this. Okay. Now you're working in like a semi-clean area. You should know the rest of this by now after being a professional, whatever we are, professional. There you go. Just drop it down. It's a little short here. Work from the middle out like a sunburst.
You want to pull it?
Yeah, no, just you got to play with it a little bit. Get the trowel, work from the middle out. Middle out is the easiest way to do that. The easiest way to get this glass to sit down nice is start in the middle and work out like a sunburst. Just let the rest drip off the edges. There's not a lot you can do about the edges. When it's all done, you got to razor them off and then sand them down. Now, because this plane will have a relatively thin tail, we really feel like this is going to be an important part of. I would not want the tail to fold. Solid wood, and this. What do you figure this model's going to go 150 miles an hour? I mean, the real tsunami, you know, this is going to be.
Happy if it gets off the ground.
He's got a 6-horsepower Salvo Mealy reworked Kawasaki engine for this thing, or whatever the hell he has. Who the hell knows? Anyway, sunburst it out, and then as soon as we can, let's get it out of here, because I'm dying of a headache from the smell. Phew.
You wanted to be a model?
If you look at this from the top, do we want to correct this opening and make it even so that we're even all the way around?
Sure. You can square it all up.
Yeah, but the problem thing is it's going to probably come out not even. Or not,
what do you mean?
Not exactly square.
It's still gonna get hot. I wouldn't wrap it in this.
Well, you can square it up. If it's not exactly square, it's not the end of the world either.
It's hot enough because you'll mess with it, will you?
That's a cosmetic thing, so
We
do it
answering this?
until it looks like you're happy with it.
High and whiny, yeah, I know.
Okay. Make sure you didn't overdraft it. Drop right in there. Okay?
You just came close.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
That's
exact.
right.
Yeah, watch, you're gonna drop it. Okay, now, we'll go to drill press, turn this over, drill the holes this way, then you can tack this in, and just block sand it to shape.
Okay, but how about
Well,
how
we-
about the side clearances?
You don't care about that now, because when you're all done, you can build the inside up, or the outside with 64th plywood, and then you got that razor edge. You got that edge, like, how did he do that?
Okay.
Oh man, Adamusco, how did he do that? Okay, so I'll just drill this out now. We'll drill that in. If you want to take a 26 blade and shave some of that, if not, just take your sanding block. Okay? I mean, it's real. The screw is holding it in. It's got to be perfect. I like to take a 26 blade or a plane. You could take, we love to use this master ash screw puller. Let's try and use that. Anything that'll keep it. Just take a few cuts off of this. Get any better than this, Mike? Come on, tell me the truth.
It's a great tool.
This is a wonderful tool. Make sure you leave it up the thickness of, a piece of paper or something. If you walk the plane off to the side, it'll take care of it. Okay. Block sand the rest in. Just block sand it in.
Hey,
That's
how are
all.
we going to deal with this gap?
We're going to fill it with 64th plywood once we're done. See, now when you tighten these, watch what happens. When you loosen these, you might be able to shift this around. But if you drop 64th plywood in it, then you get that edge. Where after 50 times putting them on and off, you don't lose that radius. Okay, good. Yeah, well then we'll just duplicate the same thing on the other side and you're done. It's on it. I had another one here. Where the hell did I put the other one, George? I didn't take it out of the...
I don't know if that's going to work, Joe. You put it on straight.
Oh,
There you go,
too straight, huh?
The 64th plywood edges are the whole ticket to getting that nice.
Oh, I put too much glue on. Okay.
Okay, I'll block sand that one in, Mike. You got the, where's the good block? Ah, that's bullshit. Real one. Done. Next. You're next, Joe. Okay, almost time for pizza, man. You're starving me. Oh, I'm not used to working without caloric intake. See, and I said, now, if we want to center this, the plywood, put the little aluminum tubes on. See, the reason I don't want to center it yet is you could loosen this up and probably move it a little bit if you really want it to. Let's see. And after you put dope in here a few times, you lose that fit a little bit anyway, so.
You need to leave some clearance for dope anyway.
Yeah, well, you're constantly changing the clearance on this. No, it won't. So you can shake that a little bit. We'll drop 60-foot plywood here and put this piece in here and drop it down to the plywood. It'll be perfect when we're done. But there's something even more important than this right now, and that is I hear a voice off in the distance going, "Time for pizza!"
Wait a minute. You're on.
Listen, this is true. Percy Hatfield was here. You saw the videos of him. Comes from South Africa. You know what the high point of his trip was? He used a half a roll of film in front of Pizza Hut, taking pictures of me and Jimmy and him in front of Pizza Hut in Canarsie, on the pier in Canarsie, in a ghetto.
So you can take it back home.
Statue of Liberty? Nah. Twin Towers? Nah. I want to go to Pizza Hut. He's like a human commercial. It's unbelievable. Okay. Well,
Something, maybe I would, but, you know. He wimped out. He wouldn't use the plane.
no, he's a perfectionist, and I'm a butcher. That's all it boils down to. Let's see whose is nicer. Being I gave him the sloppy one. Anyway, the fit is not critical because we're going to outline anywhere where it's too sloppy with 64th plywood. Very easy. And I say it's time for pizza even if you disagree. Time to go eat, you guys. Yeah, burp, 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 I know. Pizza time. Now, fresh off a batch of pepperoni pizza, we got the 2 wings out. Now, what I want to stick in a little piece right in here to complete this box. Let me get this on the macro lens. Right in here, I want to complete this piece, so I'm just going to get a piece of balsa, get it tacked in back there, and then I'm going to do the outline of the box. Try to get the box evened up with the 64th ply. While Joe's working on the other wing, we're really starting to make some production now. The goal is to get all the gear blocks in today and be, you know, at least have that thing behind us before Joe goes for his operation. Okay, I got that piece just tacked in there now. You can see how that kind of fades in from the back. Gives it a little more stiffness across here before we set up all the edges on the boxes, and I'll do the other one off camera.
See, I'm so used to working with that disc sander of mine.
You're spoiled.
Yeah, I am.
It's like a guy with a calculator forgets how to add.
But hey, Wendy, that's one tool.
Okay, this is one thing I want to put on the tape here. I'm going back and forth with these bolts now while I'm finalizing the fit. A little drop of motor oil or some kind of oil or grease. And what it does, it lets a little bit of it go down into the blind nut. And then while you're CAing this and doping it, especially the dope, you don't wind up putting a, where you get the whole thing done and all of a sudden you can't get the blind nut, the bolt into the blind nut. And you have to retap the hole. And it's funny, just one little drop on there, and for the life of that, this stuff doesn't stick. Looks like we're going to get these 2 puppies done today. I don't know. I just heard Karen's car come in, so. Time flies when you're having Spitfires, huh? How you doing, Karen?
In fact, me and
Okay,
Jim
we got, you see the little shim along the edge here? We got this finalized. And of course, when you're all done, just block sand over it. And we'll put eventually put a little aluminum tubes around the screw heads. We'll do that later because I want to get these done today. This is the whole goal. 1 down, 3 to go.
Huh?
They're going to be great. He keeps showing me pictures of Spitfires.
Boy, hey! Spitfires!
I told you, it smells like Spitfires.
Ah! Well, you get a lot of respect around here, huh, Joe? Unbelievable. Usually it's the first one that takes a long time, and then they go 1, 2, 3, no problem. Now you can see how this one on the other side, I just want to use this as an example. This side I need to sand the block away, or the piece of wing. I'd rather sand the block till I get that fit. Then over here I'll stick a little shim, sand it in. And this one I'll probably use a 64th shim, but I'll eventually get the whole outline. You want to have some clearance, of course, because that's going to build up with paint and dope and whatever. Now, another thing that'll help you, if you picture this little gear block as a cork and sand a little bit of a draft angle in. A little bit of a draft angle meaning it's a little thinner on the bottom and the top, so it goes in like a cork in a bottle and still maintains that clearance. What that does is then after you pick this up and all the sides have paint and dope on them, you can still pull it right out. Now the trick here is it's always easier to build the edges up once you have a plug that fits reasonably than it is to try to carve the plug out of one piece. Put a little bit of a draft angle on this side, needs to be trued up just a little more, and we'll pretty much be done with 2. How's your end coming? You still making those braces? Okay. Oh, Spitfires. Okay, they're in progress here. We're moving. Here's the one final thing. We have the block in nice and tight, and I still have one side that's a little thick. Now, it's almost impossible to do that with balsa wood, so I'll strip off a little piece of 64th plywood. Just mark. Does I get the scissors there? This is such a nice, neat little trick, it's unbelievable. Take the little piece, try to get it to be a nice tight fit, let it stand right up. Okay, now you have a choice. You can glue it onto the block. Let's see which way it would look more attractive. I'll glue it onto the block. It'll be done in one done deal. Just leave it a little bit oversized. Let this kick off. Try not to glue it to your fingers, which of course always happens. Whoa! Perfect. Boy, this worked out so nice, I can't believe it. Okay, I got all the edges here now. I'll leave the screws in position, give this a little block sanding, and this wing is ready to put on a rack, and then we'll both get to work on the other one. Yeah, it's so easy to build one plane at a time. After you do this, it's like going playing baseball, you know, where you take a bat that weighs 1,000 pounds. Then when you go to swing the normal bat, it's so easy, it's unbelievable. I don't want to sand this any more than we have to, as I don't want to make the sheeting paper thin here. Oh, that's a nice fit. Can you live with that, Joe?
You better believe it.
Okay, breathe deep. You got this one tacked in or not?
No,
oh, no, it's just sitting loose.
Yeah,
okay.
See, that's more of a direct shot.
Okay, what we can do is tack them in and then just run the drill in. If you think you got... By the way, that's fine. That's fine.
I think that one will be okay.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
This one, I gotta...
Yeah, I just got that tacked in and I want to... If that fit is really too tight, I can just gently by hand run an 1/8 inch drill in, and that's fine, Joe. That'll be fine. I think there's one step we left out before. We left a pack of bolts long so that we could bolt the plywood covers over the hatches, and then you can just transpose down how much has to be trimmed off each edge. You need long bolts to do this, and then of course the plywood drops in and you can put the balsa cover on. I don't know if, I think we forgot to do this. I don't remember shooting this. The long bolts just hold the hatch in so you can get the final trimming. And remember that whole thing of having a little bit of an angle like a bottle cork, so there's a little draft angle. It can drop in and out. If you have it straight or reverse draft angle, the thing will always be sticking in there. It'll be a pain in the neck. Okay, I'd say this was one heck of a good day. This is the point we're sitting at with the Spitfire project, and we're going to go get some Z's. Tomorrow we have some things to do in the shop, and we'll pick this up on the next day. Now before I turn in tonight, I want to show these things. These are the little Dremel, little guys that Uwe Degner sent me from Germany. And you can see they're like a little cup. We tried one out and it was super, super nice to work with. Fits right on the end of a Dremel tool, of course, and it has the grit going all around the cap. I don't know where he gets them, but I wrote him a letter to please let me know where I could buy them, or if he can get them from Germany, that's even okay too. This is definitely something you might want to have in your entourage for modeling supplies. Thanks, Uwe. Now, I always like to put little tips on these videos, little tips you can use. And by the way, this is a new material. I've only used it 2 or 3 times already. They make it in blue too, and I'm going to have to get a tube. It's like $12 a tube here, but it doesn't really matter. It's more than the red stuff is. It seems to work a whole lot better. And what I did, had a customer here this morning, and we were doing a little repair on his plane. It's out there drying. And what I'm doing, I always like to test things and see that they last a good amount of time. This really, the whole thing was broken in the back, and we filled in a bunch of dings here, but it looks like it's drying out here on a nice cool fall day. It looks like it's a good material, and we're going to be using it more and more, and I'd suggest anybody out there has some technology I don't know about, pass it on to me. It's a good material. Now I even did a big repair on this. This was all cracked and broken, and I glued it up, fiberglassed it, and then used that green nitro stain. By the way, that stuff really, I'm really impressed with how well it works. It seems like it takes 5 minutes to dry. You sand it out with Sikkens and 500, and you put the this only has one coat of red on it, by the way. I haven't put any clear on it. One coat of red, and looks like you could use this just the way it is. Anyway, good material. I hope you try it, and any information, any tips, anything you can add to the Spitfire program, needless to say, please do it. I'm really impressed with how nice this stuff works. Now another thing too, whenever you do a repair like this, you notice I don't have it out in the sun. You really never put it in the bright sun. The bright sun will tend to bubble up the paint or let it gas off before it gets a good chemical bond, and you wind up with fillets that lift, bubbles, places where the paint doesn't get good adhesion. Always try to keep it in a warm area, but also in the shade. Good tips. I hope you can use them. Whatever you can use them, use them. Now speaking of that too, when I bought that putty, I wound up getting these rubber squeegees. I'm going to try to use these. I prefer the SIG one, but I'm going to be trying to use these in the future too. I hope all of these things, you know, all these little ideas and tips and whatever, try, you know, make the most of all the information I can possibly put on a tape. And if you have a good idea, please send it in, and I'll include it on the tape, and I'll pass it on to Tom Morris, just like I do with all the photos. And thanks to everybody that's been sending in Spitfire material. Appreciate it all. Now one of the things we're going to try to do with this Spitfire project is we'd like to keep the models to about 60 ounces based on the wing displacement and the fact that we know 60-ounce pattern masters fly real well, and they fly well into the 70s. What we want to do is look at about 6, 8, or 10 ways that we can save some weight and yet maintain all the good features of the pattern master. The first of which is going to be, we're going to try to mold the top and bottom blocks. Of course, I've mentioned that. We're going to try in some way maybe to improvise a little bit better cowling system. Joe has done a beautiful job on the wings. They're unbelievably nice. Well, one of the things I'm going to try to do, Joe is being operated on today. Well, he'll be out of commission for about 2 weeks. I'm going to take a couple of these bell cranks and see reasonably. Now these bell cranks were made with the idea in mind they're going to go in 70-ounce planes. They have to be bulletproof, and obviously we have to make it with 100% chance that they're never going to break. Well, in my own plane and in Joe's plane, we're looking to save every little bit of weight. I want to see how much. I'm going to spend a little time with the Dremel tool, and with that little tool that Uwe Degner sent in, I want to spend a little time with that and see just how much weight I can get off a normal bell crank assembly. So that's one of the objects I want to. I have some time tonight. Actually, everything is cool in the shop here. I'm going to do some grinding, some hand grinding. This is one of the things I would suggest you not try on your own. This is like you see those silly advertisements, don't try this at home. Well, there's a reason. Is when we made the bell crank mold, we hung a Chevy V8 engine from it over the weekend to see if it distorted or broke. It didn't. And that's the kind of security I like to have when I build a plane. But in this case, we're building a very special model. This model is going to have a lot of little details, exhaust stacks, canopies and cowlings and scoops and things, and probably more than the normal amount of paint on it to get this fancy paint job that we want, and we still haven't finalized that. So one of the things I'm going to do is look at a lot of little areas, the blocks and maybe the bell crank, that we can save a little weight on And again, if this doesn't work out, we can always just reach in a drawer and get out another belt crank assembly. So let me go sit at the Dremel tool and see what I can come up with. The first thing I want to do on a job like this, because this is kind of a time-consuming thing, I want to put a rough cutter in. A rough cutter has normally what you would be using on aluminum. That seems to cut nylon real nice. And remember, this is glass reinforced nylon. It is relatively difficult to carve. Now let me just get this on the macro lens so you can get an idea of what I'm doing here in case you want to do this on your own. I'm removing material, but I'm going to leave an I-beam section. If you were to look at this in cross section, leave the thickness at both edges and just bridge this with an I-beam section. That's the goal here. And of course I'm going to just go through this off camera. I'll do the rest of these holes. And I'll get an idea of how this works. Again, when you're doing this kind of model, you got to do a little bit of experiment because you have to make up for the weight that's going to be in the details. This is going to be a relatively complex, fancy model. Again, it just takes a lot of time. It's time consuming. But again, we are trying to produce a very special model. Now I've got one side just roughed out here. Of course I'll clean this up with some sandpaper. But I'm going to try that little tool that Uwe Degner sent in. Just try to clean this up. The aluminum cutter does cut it nicely, and of course it just gets labor intensive. You have to go back. Actually, it's more labor intensive. I have to do 2 of these. So may as well do the rest of these off camera, and then we'll go take a look at what they look like later. Yeah, it worked pretty decently now. A little time consuming, but looks like we've got an amount of weight that for all purposes now we can put into exhaust stacks and paint and canopies and whatever. Now, after getting both of them done, you can get an idea how much of this material actually came off. Now, believe me, this took longer than I thought it would. This is a good couple hours of work here. Anyway, we do have them both done, and that's the nice part about making 2 planes at once. Once you tool up or set up or clean up, you get all the parts made for that assembly, and you can move on to the next one. And just for laughs, I want to see what we've gained. The typical belt crank assembly is about 19 grams. Let's see if we are the standard one, give or take the weight of the wire and the bushing. Standard one is 19. Let's see what one of these puppies weigh. It's about we saved about almost 6 grams on that one. This one is not quite as light. This one is a gram heavier. We save 5 or 6 grams by doing that. I know you might be thinking, what you're probably thinking is, so what, no big deal, right? Yeah? If you can do that 8-10 times in the course of building a plane and still have a motor run, you'll really have something special. You can add all kind of pilots. And now the last step, I'm just taking some 220 paper and break down all the edges. Anytime you have a part that's under a lot of stress, and this goes for just about anything from a motor to any kind of assembly, you want to get anything that's like a razor edge broken down in radius. The reason they polish connecting rods in engines. The reason is a crack will always start on a razor edge and then work its way into the part. So, being we save 5-6 grams each on these, I know it's a very tempting thing to say, that won't add up, 5 grams here, 5 grams there, 5 grams. All of a sudden your plane's 5 ounces heavier than the one you originally intended. You get a little behind on the weight penalties. We'd like to be a little bit ahead, and since Joe has put so much work into those wings, I really feel like I want to put my best effort into this. Now the normal models like Strega and like some of these other models that aren't really totally semi-scale, it isn't really important. If you just use good wood and not too much paint, you wind up with the same result. But this is one of those deals where I'd like to pull out all the stops and really like to have a super plane, 2 super planes. Okay, all the edges are radiused. It's hard to believe this is like a whole night's work doing this. Joe, I hope you appreciate this. Now today I'm trying to lay out a little bit of a production schedule here. But one thing I think is worth mentioning, because if you've watched these videos since 1987, you've seen many planes built, many planes repaired, whatever. One of the things worth mentioning, anytime you're going to set up a control system, to me, at least the way I envision it, should last 10-15 years. It should be an infinite life. And one of the things I see people doing over and over, and if I'm going to really help somebody, I have to run the risk of being a little bit politically incorrect here. I have seen, no matter what material you make the bell crank out of, aluminum, nylon, Delrin, or glass nylon, I have seen so many planes crash because flexible lead-outs have broken. Now, granted, many expert people have figured out, many people have figured out the correct way to do it with a brass tube and a bushing and this and that and whatever. But I've seen so many fail that I'm very skeptical when I see a plane with flexible lead-outs, wondering how long it's going to last. The most infamous of those was Jimmy Casale, who I think lost 2 or 3 in 1 year because the lead-outs failed right at the bell crank. So I've always chosen myself to use music wire, 032 wire. Now what I've had in the past is I've never been able to buy 48-inch wire up until this year. So I'd have to put a joint maybe 6 inches from the bell crank, and that required a little more of a high-tech way of doing it. This year we have 48-inch wire. It's available direct from Scott Smith or from me. It comes in 48-inch lengths, which means you don't need to put a splice in it. So of all the things you can do wrong with solid wire, the one thing you never want to do is bend it and then bend it back. You never want to put a razor-sharp bend in it, number 2. You never want to do anything to it that detempers it. You wouldn't want to heat this with a propane torch. You would then turn it into what would amount to be coat hanger wire. So my suggestions are use only Stay Bright silver solder. It melts at a little over 400 degrees, and this way you don't detemper the wire. A little brass sleeve is nice. It makes a nice neat workman-like joint, and I'll do this on the video, of course. But it's my suggestion that unless you have some tremendously compelling reason to want to use flexible lead-outs, given the fact that so many have failed on so many people's planes, if you're not comfortable with it, use the solid wire. When I look around and I see people at our schlock circle using them and they fail on ringmasters, I wonder how they're going to fail on a plane like this. But anyway, I'll show the connection up close. I'm not going to even try to attempt to show how to attach flexible lead-outs, and I would suggest, again, unless you have this compelling reason, as far as the weight goes, I don't think they're a lot lighter. I've had people tell me they're a 64th of a grain lighter or some amount. Yeah, well, they're not that light when when the plane goes in and you have to repair the plane to repair them. The list of people that have lost planes with flexible lead-outs goes on and on. I don't even want to start because I'm politically incorrect enough as it is. Anyway, I'm going to put the bell crank systems together. Again, I have to make 2 of them. I took some of the material away from this. We got about 5 or 6 grams off each bell crank. Got rid of all the sharp edges the other night while I had some time. And by the way, this is a little, one of the things I always emphasize on these tapes, if you really want to help somebody, one of the things most people that don't work in a production-oriented job at work, in other words, a lawyer, an accountant, a whatever, if you're not production-oriented, you tend not to be good at managing time. What I do is, like the other night, I had an hour while my wife was getting dressed. I run downstairs and lighten up the bell cranks, or I do something else. Or today I have a decent amount of time. I can plan my day out in such a way that I get some meaningful results out of the time I have. A lot of people think, oh, I have an infinite amount of time. Well, that's not correct. I have a very limited amount of time, but I use the time effectively. I don't sit and dilly-dally and look at things and try to decide what comes next and the man in the moon or the cow that flew over the moon. When I come down to the shop, I get the camera cracking, I figure out my schedule of what I want to do, and I get cracking. So today, I'd like to try to get both of the bell crank assemblies made. I'll show it on the video, and then we'll get both of them into the wing, and then I can call Joe tonight, and he's been operated on, I think, yeah, yesterday. He'll be happy to know he has 2 bell cranks in the wings. Now the first thing I want to do, I have the thin piece of copper tubing here. This is the size that fits inside of a fuel tank vent. Take some 600 paper or some fine paper, 600 is good. Clean it down to bare brass. Clean the part of the wire, the last 6-8 inches of the wire. Now remember, this wire comes with a coating on it, and you would not want to solder over the coating if you could help it. And this is one way I find convenient to cut the tubing. Just roll it with an X-Acto knife or whatever. It seems like this does a reasonably good job, but once you fracture it, you get nice little pieces off, and of course you can dress the ends off. And since we're making 2 planes at once, we're going to need, actually we're going to need 4 pieces here. I better cut them all at once. Again, production oriented. If you're only making 1 plane, hey, bing, bing, bing. But if you're doing 2 at once, you want to try to use your time effectively. And then of course you want to deburr the tubing, just to make it a very mechanic-like joint, and it snaps right off. I want to do the same thing with the wire. Remember, this wire comes with a coating on it. It's not like the wire that you normally would get from SIG where it has very little coating. This has to be cleaned. Okay, there, it's down to bright and shiny now. Now, a lot of people have trouble figuring out exactly how to get a 90 degree. In our case, it's going to be a little more than 90. What I try to do is line up the pliers with the thickness of the bell crank and put a scratch on the pliers right about where it's as thick as the bell crank. Now I know that's where I'm going to pinch the wire. Now I want to leave about a 6-inch piece, 5-6-inch piece. I'll get it even with that, and then I can. Now here's the trick here to get a nice radius bend. Don't grab the wire right by the pliers. Get back out about a 1/4 of an inch, and that gives you a radius bend. The closer you get to the bending point, the more you pinch and kink the wire. I want to bend back like this. I want a radius bend, and I want to overbend it just a little bit. Okay, then I can make sure I have the correct, before I pinch this, slip it through the hole. You'll notice the hole is exactly the right size. And while we're on the subject, believe me, there are other bell cranks on the market that are half the price. Well, God bless you if you decide to use one. Call up some of the people that have had bell crank failures and I think you'll change your mind. And we have had many. There are no shortage. I want to bend this back just a little, very little. Now, the object here is we want to have some length here. I'll show this on the close-up. Some length before the joint. If you bend this nice and tight here, you're going to have a kink where it constantly wants the oil can and bend back and forth. In fact, I'll show that on a close-up. It'll be a little bit easier. All right, here's what I'm talking about. Here's the bell crank, regardless of what the size is. This is so important, especially to people on the just coming up. If you were to take this wire, and a lot of people try to do this, they make a bend that looks similar to this. Tie this here with copper wire, solder it, or a bushing. What happens right here, this bend here, is constantly it's constantly, as you pull test the plane, it's doing this constantly. Constantly. And it will run the risk that eventually it'll fail there or fail there, and at which point in time it just pulls out. Like not to do that. A better way, and believe me, this is stuff, the planes I have in the shop, 10, 11 years old, some are even older than that, they need to stand the test of time. You need to have this radius very slightly coming in here, and this at least 5 or 6 inches long, so that there's no sharp bends. And then a piece of tubing slid up here and silver soldered, and we can trim that off if necessary. But it's the loop effect, not a tight little, and no sharp corners, no 90 degree, even if you put a 90-degree bend here, you run the risk of fracturing the wire. We want total reliability. If I'm going to spend my whole winter building these planes, I want total reliability. Now, because the bell cranks themselves are made out of glass nylon, the nylon itself is an excellent bushing material. You don't need to run the weight of the brass bushing. You don't need threaded rod with nuts and junk that are going to loosen up or have to be soldered. You need a 1/1000th fit in the bell crank, so it's nice and free. The bell crank should move by itself, just under its own weight. Anyway, that system has worked well in the past and have had absolutely no bell crank failures. Okay, before soldering, now if you really want to be even doubly sure, you can bend a little hook in the end of this. That's not a problem. I don't like to do that on built-up wings if I possibly can, because it tends to break out the ribs further out into the wing. But that's about the system that I've worked with, and it's worked for me well. That's about it right there. Now, if this is going into a plane that you intend to spend hundreds of hours buffing and detailing and making exhaust stacks, I think that's your lifetime control system, and that's what we're striving for. Now, anytime you're going to solder around a bell crank, you want to use Stay Bright solder and Stay Bright flux. This is silver solder. Normal solder melts around somewhere around 700 degrees. This melts around 400. So one of the advantages is you don't melt the bell crank, number one. When we make up the push rod and the push rod ends, or the bushings, Stay Bright silver solder is the way to go. If you've never used this before, one of the things you have to do is get some baking soda and some water, mix it up, and make a defluxing agent. If you fail to deflux it, there's sulfuric acid in here, or a very powerful acid that will eventually corrode and rust everything. So you need to clean the joint and then hopefully put a little wax, oil, grease, paint, something over it so air won't get to the clean joint. But for right now, I'm warming up the soldering iron. I'll do these joints. This is the material of choice for the whole plane. No other solder anywhere in the plane. Stay Bright silver solder. Okay, so obviously rule number one on any soldering is clean the part with clean sandpaper. Get some of the acid on it. Soldering iron has to be pre-warmed, needless to say, and I have this old antique piece of junk here. But what I want to do is, I want to run, the solder follows the heat. I want to see it come out the other end of the tube. Then I want to run it around the bottom. Watch the solder come out both ends of the tube, and I know I have a good joint. Now once the joint cools, this is baking soda and water, you'll notice. One of the ways you can tell if you have a good solder joint, it'll be shiny. A dull joint is usually a cold joint, it's not so good. Let this stuff just sit on there. This will kill all the acid off. And then of course we'll wipe it clean. And this is ordinary, I'll show this. Ordinary baking soda and water makes up a good defluxing agent. This was a trick that Jim Damarel showed me. You can use it over and over again. When it dries out, just add more water. Same stuff you use to keep the refrigerator clean from getting smelly. Now I don't remember, can't remember if I mentioned this, but one of the things you should do is always let the solder joint cool normally. Don't just quench it in water or acid or anything, oil. Let it dry normally. Then what I do, I'm taking some 600 paper, I did the baking soda routine, and try to get it immaculately clean, and that's to get any grit, anything that I don't like on a soldering joint. You'd be surprised how many people that have really good modeling skills have models crash because of failed soldering joints, either from trying to use acid or rosin core solder, or some other myriad of things, not cleaning them. Just trying to show this, should be immaculately cleaned. And we're ready to go on. I'll make the other one up off camera. We're ready to go on to the push rods. Okay, step one on making up the push rod is I want to get a little washer on this. I don't want this to be walking up and down under load, so I took the original ones that Joe made up, and of course these are standard arrow shafts. Just solder on this washer. Now there's a couple of ways of holding that washer in position. One way is you can take a block of wood like so, and that's kind of the standard way of doing it. Or what I tried to do this time, I tried to use a drill index, drop the wire in and hold it while I'm doing it. That seemed to work a little bit better. So now it's real important to get the wire so it's not on an angle, and of course the drill index holds it in complete alignment, so that's kind of nice. You don't want the washer on looking from the front or the side or the back. You don't want to have a, let me just get some solder on the iron here. This seems to be an improved way over the wood block method. And of course let the joint cool by itself. It holds the washer flat this way, because that washer is going to be part of the bearing as this push rod tries to walk up and down. Now if you just left that washer off, you'd eventually wear a radius into the joint, and you'd have an unwanted slop in the control system. Okay, you can see that's about as perfect as you can get it with no extra work. Good tip. Hey, by the way, that works good. Okay, so now we're ready to put this through the bell crank and then solder the eyelet on the bottom. And what I have is these, what amount to be special little eyelets that fit over here, and I'll show this up close. I press on an eyelet, and then I want to mark with a pen exactly where I want to put a little bit of a notch, because I want to safety wire this. Remember, what I'm trying to do is get redundancy here. A lot of redundancy. And by using an eyelet, I don't have to get the heat in here where it's going to melt the bell crank. You really would like to not melt the bell crank. So first thing I'll do is get the Dremel tool out. This is one of those things you laugh at. You say, ah, you don't need that. That's too much, too much. Yeah, baloney. Okay, so let me show this up close. This is the kind of stuff you'd like to build into even a sport plane, so that when it comes time that you're going to build a really pro plane, you've got this technology down pat. Okay, I'm hoping that's picking up good on the macro lens. Now I want to wrap some safety wire around that. A copper wire will be fine. And of course solder it. This way, even if the solder joint fails in 10 years from now, you've got that, the wire should hold it in place. You would imagine a good redundancy system. Okay, and we're just ready to press the bushing into the proper clearance. You may want to put a piece of paper between the bell crank and the bushing. That should set your clearance real accurate, and you should be all set in one solder joint. This should be a lifetime solder joint, let's hope. Again, you want to do this joint with as little heat as possible. You sure don't want to melt the bell crank. That's the whole deal here. Now, of course, every step of the way I'm defluxing this with the baking soda and water. I could trim a little bit of this off, not a whole lot, just to make it like a little more workmanlike joint. Now, a couple of the things I want to make sure. Number one, that I don't have any up and down clearance in the push rod. I don't want to be able to slop the push rod up and down. Nice tight fit, and that is just about as perfect as it gets. Real good. I still have good clearance. None of this is greased the world. We're going to do that with chain lube once it's installed. Got a real nice fit here. Now there's a little bit of extra wire. I can trim that off with the Dremel, and that's about all I can do with this one. And I'll do the other one off camera. Woo, it's hot. Yoo-hoo. And needless to say, of course, I'm doing two planes. Hey, I'll do the other one. I want to keep up the speed, and then I want to finish up the push rod, and maybe even get this installed tonight before we're finished with this session. Okay, one of the things that I've seen people have trouble with is splitting an arrow shaft at the end, probably because it wasn't a good fit and you force it in, or slop where the rod comes up through the hole. So what I do is I take thin carbon fiber and wrap the end to past where this is, and just CA it, and then just hit it with some sandpaper to get it nice and workmanlike. But probably, again, probably overkill, but when you're talking about having a plane for 2,000 flights, maybe at the end of 2,000 flights you'll be glad that that little bit of extra strength is there.
Do one for the circle burners, you could just video that.
Yeah, you could use that demo.
Seminar.
Yeah. All right, what I like to do is, this is the easiest way I know to do this, is get some thin CA down by the both ends. Again, I have seen these break. So again, I'm going for overkill instead of whatever the alternative is. It's easier if you just get one end. This stuff, you don't want to get a splinter with it either. Look at this, I'm down to the end of the CA. Can you believe this? It seems to glue right to your hand so nicely, too. Let that kind of get started. It's amazing how long this stuff takes to kick. Okay, then I can wrap this around. See if that's President Nixon.
For us not.
I love that. We get a phone call from George, and he's got some thin CA, so we don't even have to go down and buy more at the hobby shop. Can you imagine? Okay, I'm just wrapping this, and of course you get to the very end. I like to go back over where the end is a couple extra times, right where that hole is. Boy, you can't believe, you got to get the last drop out of here. Come on, you son of a gun. Hard to believe. We're going to have to wait for George to get here. Here comes some. Come on, puppy. Come out. All right, put this away. After I get the CA on there, Just, again, just to make it a workmanlike job, scuff it up a little bit. And we're going to go to lunch. When we come back, we'll look at maybe getting one of these in. I got both of them done now. So that actually is a pretty decent amount of time of work. All of these little jobs, and one of the things I've said time and time again, if you can do more and more of these jobs at times that are convenient, an hour here, an hour there, an hour here, well, now putting this in a wing will be a relatively simple job. Now what I'm going to do is leave the back of this open until we actually, and I'll put that on a tape, until we actually get the dimension we want, and we'll fine tune it by elongating the hole if necessary and then filling it. But for right now you can just leave the back of the arrow shaft open. Make sure all of these guys have complete clearance. I won't put any grease on it. I like to use that PJ1 chain lube once I get it actually in the plane and get all the little fine tuning on it. Now tonight, one of the things I want to do, I want to get the bell crank in. I'll get one done, of course. In fact, maybe I'll try to get both of them done here in one session if we can. One of the things I want to check, Joe has each one of these wings marked as the green wing and the blue wing. I want to make sure I'm putting the blue wing and the green wing parts all together. These are the green wing parts. Now one of the things I have to do here, and I guess this is typical, is just do a dry fit on this. So what I want to do is run this backwards. I'm going to have to break away some of the center rib, I'm sure of that. Let me get a look at this and see how much I'm going to have to break away. Okay, maybe from this angle I can show this. One of the splices and the, whatever you want to call this, the piece that holds the spar, and this is hardwood. And of course Joe has the other piece made up. So what I'm going to have to do is, usually I can get away with just taking one rib out here, and that'll do it. One of the things keep in mind though is, well, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I like to break this rib away. I don't like to cut it with a razor. I like to break it, and then once I get the bell crank in, I can glue it back in. What happens if you cut it, it never seems to fit in exactly the same way. So let me break that one out, and we can kind of slide the bell crank in here. Really making some progress in this. I'm impressed. And of course, whenever you go to do this on camera, you always have some problems. So let me just break one rib away and see if I can get away with breaking just one. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Oh yes. So I break that piece out. Now it should, in theory, go right back in together, giving us a good alignment. Now I want to slide the lead outs through. Again, because I'm doing two at a time, if I do find a little shortcut, I can use the shortcut on the second wing. When you build using the rod method, you get used to doing this. By the way, anybody that's interested in a set of these templates, we don't have plans yet, but Joe already has the templates. And I'll show either at the end of this tape or on the beginning of the other one. I got back from Pat Johnson the prototype little shrink down of the Tsunami plan. That'll fit right in there, nice. Joe, you're okay. I don't care what Damarel says about you. Ooh, nice precision fit. Amazing. Okay, now I have to cut, let me show this up close. I have to cut the piece for the push rod out. Now you can see how that just presses down into position. Of course, this is rubbing here. I can't do much about that. Everything Joe cut on this wing was just perfect so far. This fits right in. Okay, now I need to figure out exactly where this push rod, so I can cut the hole. Where it's gonna, I'm lining this up with what should be the middle of the wing. And all I'll do is, using the push rod, at least for a rough gauge, and of course I'll open this up after I put the horn on, I can open this up. I'd like to make the hole, you know, no bigger than it has to be, that's for sure. This way I can use the push rod itself for a guide. That's just about out here. Before I actually glue it in, I can make sure I have it. Get that piece out of there. Anyway, we should be pretty soon be coming up on the end of this tape. I don't know how much we're going to get done tonight, but if I have to, I'll pick it up on the next tape. That won't be a problem. Okay, that slides real nice. This needs to go down a little more. And what I do is, let me show this. Now I'm using a macro lens here, so just give me a second. I want to look all the way down at the bell crank, make sure it's parallel to the center line of the wing. I can still do some final sanding and adjusting. All the way down, all the way back. Nice clearance. You can see the workmanship Joe put into this wing. It's unbelievable. So that, if it wasn't right, I could shim it or move the hole or whatever. Now I need to just push this down so it's at the height of the sheeting. I don't want to have this either higher or lower as a step. Now, one of the things I have to do, I have to cut back a little bit on each one of the ribs so that I can pull this back and get glue in there and then kick it. Of course, you could use epoxy if you had somebody with a third hand to help you, but what I do is just make up a little notch, and this is kind of standard building. Use this on almost all the planes. Now you can pull back on this, get the glue down in there, and then kick it, of course. Here's a nice, this is a good tip. What do you do? I take the top off. This is the slow CA, the thick. Take the top off, and when you push a pin in, you'll see a big glob will come out the bottom. Now when you put it back together, you got at least another day or so before it clogs up again. So that gives you a little bit of a head start. It's not a pain in the ass when this clogs up. It really is terrible. All right, that'll save a lot of the clogging up, though. Now I'm just using the piece itself to get a final fit. And what I'll do here, of course I want to make sure it's perfectly parallel in every dimension. And push it up, pull it back, push it up, pull it back a few times, get it good and saturated. As always, let the Q-tips get a nice edge on that. Now we'll have one final adjustment here before we commit, and we can raise and lower the bell crank, and I'll look in the wingtip and I'll see if that's perfectly aligned before I put the final little drop of CA holding the bolt. And I serrated the edge of the bell crank bolt, by the way. Just take the parting wheel and just hit it. I'll let this kick off, then I'll turn it over and hit all the joints on the inside. Now I can just dry fit this little piece back in here. Because it's a broken piece, it usually fits right in. You can't even see the seam if you don't know it's there. Now with it up like this, I can hit this piece in here. Now I just want to double check that that bell crank is in right in the middle and parallel and straight before I glue the sheeting on. Now with the wing upside down, I can get in here and double glue all the areas. Get some CA in there. CA to bell crank bolt, I serrated that edge. Since he did this with all ambroid, it's real easy to just go over all the joints. Once you go over a joint, rub it with Q-tips, and you'll find out it gives you the nicest amount of working time. It kicks nice and easy. No, we're at the end of the tape, and in the next session I'm going to sheet the rest of the wing, maybe get the cap strips on, see how much more of this I can get together. I'm really working against the deadline because Joe is on his disability, and I'd like to get this at least semi put together for him, so when he, well, it'll be a surprise. Hey Joe, you'll have one wing finished when you get out of the hospital. See you on the next tape.